Everybody, thanks again for joining me. It's Azure Chris here, and we're going to continue on our 10 steps to get started with Azure Partners. Today we're talking about number 5, that's VPN. So last time we were discussing moving workloads from your customer's prem into Azure. But what if you have a customer that has workloads that just aren't cloud ready? Maybe it's an old unsupported operating system like Windows 2003 that can't be moved into Azure. Or maybe they have a physical server that has directly connected hardware to it. Or the hardware itself is an old legacy AS400 mainframe or something like that that needs to stay on colo but has a front end that's going to live in Azure. Maybe you have a different scenario where the customer has retail locations all across the country and they all need connectivity into Azure, or an enterprise that's globally dispersed, right? That's where Virtual Private Network or VPN comes in. So there are 2 different methods in Azure to deploy VPN. The first one was leveraging a VPN Gateway or Virtual Network Gateway in Azure. And what that does was creating a virtual appliance in Azure that gave you a public IP, and that allowed you to pair to your CPE or customer premise equipment on-prem. And that's traditionally, a physical Palo Alto firewall or a Cisco VPN concentrator or something like that. That would allow you to, take the public IP here, throw a /27 in the middle or something, and you'd have your point-to-point connectivity. You don't only have to use the VPN gateway, you can leverage a virtual appliance of your choice in the Azure Marketplace like Fortinet or something like that. But what that does is that creates your point-to-point connectivity, right? So that would be great. That would be enough to have your domain controller replicate to Azure with a domain controller that lives in there on a virtual machine. And that would be great. But what if you had a customer that didn't only want to take advantage of VPN Gateway? They also want to leverage ExpressRoute, or they want to make Azure their internet edge and leverage Azure Firewall. Now you're talking about a more robust network design. That's where Azure Virtual WAN comes in. So Azure Virtual WAN is the second method to deploy these services, and it allows you to take the VPN gateway, the ExpressRoutes, the firewalls, and allows you to manipulate these services all in one area in the Azure portal, so that one blade. So now you can set up, what traditionally you'd have to go into the VPN gateway and configure that there, and jump into ExpressRoute, configure that there, Azure Firewall, same thing, go into that blade, configure that, and the troubleshooting configuration was all separated. Now with Azure Firewall, Azure Virtual WAN, you're jumping into that portal, and you can take advantage of all these services, deploy, configure, troubleshoot all in one location. Azure Virtual WAN doesn't only do that, it changes the topology of the design. So what was with VPN Gateway, that point-to-point connectivity, you now have a hub and spoke model. So now you have a IP transit network in the cloud, which could be a 10.10 network or whatever, and that allows you to take advantage of things like BGP with an ASN number and leverage SD-WAN, right? And more robust hybrid IT story, and allowing you to deny or allow services between VPN gateways and ExpressRoutes, or VNet to VNet in different regions, or allowing point-to-site connectivity and leveraging a zero trust model based on a user's identity, right? So much more robust here when you're leveraging the services with Azure Virtual WAN. There are a lot of third-party vendors out there that are taking advantage of this technology. The vendor of choice that I use, and I'll show you this with my demo, is NetFoundry. These guys are fantastic. I'll show you a demo of what it looks like, but what they've done is that traditionally with that CPE, that Palo Alto physical appliance, you'd have to be on-prem, you'd have to configure it, maybe 2 of them for resiliency, you'd have to send them both to the colo facility, you'd have to provide a map and talk to your gold support, your gold hands, for them to rack and stack all that. This could take months, weeks, or years, whatever, to set up an environment depending on how big it is. But with NetFoundry, you're now able to go on their page, their portal, download an OVA, and install it on your hypervisor of choice, whether it's Hyper-V or VMware, and take advantage of your hypervisor cluster there for resiliency. So now you can have SD-WAN up within 30 minutes, 40 minutes versus months or weeks, right? So really the value there is amazing. They also take, they're taking a lot of the heavy lifting and the automation away from you. So great technology here, guys. We're going to touch a little bit more on the technology, the theory. I'm going to jump on the desktop, show you a demo of this, show you what NetFoundry looks like, and hopefully you can take this technology and use it on your day-to-day. Let's just jump right into it. So hello everybody, thanks again for sticking with me. We're going to continue on our 10 steps to get started with Azure for Partners, and we're talking about number 5, VPN, right? So we're starting on my blog page again, this is Azure Chris, and I really want to start with a jump off point for you, right, and provide you some documentation. So really at high level, what is Azure Virtual WAN? You can see depicted by the diagram here. What we talked about, right? The site-to-site VPN, the point-to-site VPN, your SD-WAN CPE, leveraging ExpressRoute, all these different services, right? You can take advantage of it. And this is my write-up. I have some information here, and I provide some more diagrams with that. Like I said, the hub and spoke model here, and that networking and in the Microsoft backbone. And like I said, all these different types of services between point-to-site users and VPN connectivity. And if I drill down into this documentation, there's a lot here, right? So just like I said, the SD-WAN, your VPN CPE, right? What traditionally was like a Palo Alto firewall, something like that, but you can leverage somebody like NetFoundry, and we'll walk through that in a couple of minutes. But that's like a virtual OVA or something. And you can enable all these different services, site-to-site VPNs, remote users, point-to-site connectivity, private ExpressRoute connectivity, intra-cloud connectivity, right? For different virtual networks, or AWS to Azure, right? Private ExpressRoute, all this different stuff, right? You can see all these different services here, and they kind of work through all that stuff, all the different services. They talk about the different SKUs that are available, whether or not you're going to be leveraging ExpressRoute and these things, or you're just going to stick with a basic site-to-site. That's where you just go with the basic SKU versus the standard. They provide some documentation around the architecture and the design for you to drill down into what a global transit network architecture design looks like. And then they talk about configuring the end-to-end virtual network and kind of what all the different things or different terminology and what they mean, right? So hubs, the hub gateway, the virtual network connections, hub-to-hub connections, and kind of what all that stuff that's around that. So a really great documentation here that I provided. You could drill down into the different tutorials and it can walk you through it. I have links to that, but I also provide a link here to what is Azure VPN Gateway, right? So I said there was 2 different methods. This is the first method that they came out with, and this is the Virtual Network Gateway. This is that point-to-point model, that option that I talked about, right? And there are different services. There's different things to think about when you go with the VPN gateway, right? And they go through the designing and all that. And you can see what services are supported, right? What's supported between point-to-site, site-to-site, and ExpressRoute, the typical bandwidth, and all the different options. And depending on what gateway SKU you get, that dictates the aggregate bandwidth, right? The throughput that you get, and what are the options that you get, and how many tunnels you get. And there's a different cost associated with these. So you have to keep in mind what your customer is going to need, how much bandwidth, what's going to be talking between the different locations, and then you pick the appropriate SKU. They say if you need more than 30 site-to-site tunnels, they direct you to Azure Virtual WAN there. There's a pricing page link here, and like I said, more of the kind of the algorithms, the encryption algorithms that they're using in the backend. Pricing and all of that additional information. So we jump back to my blog site, and I want to cover this. So I did talk about the point-to-point connectivity versus the hub and spoke model. Here are the network topology diagrams here. This is the point-to-point. You can see the VNet in Azure, your VPN gateway, which has the public IP address, your IPsec tunnel between the public IP address of your CPE, your customer premise equipment, and you have your different IP spaces, and you'd have your routing created through that. The other option is for Azure Virtual WAN, and this is the hub and spoke model, where you can see you have multiple VNets in Azure in the different IP spaces, and then you have your hub here with that transit network and that IP space. Like I said, it can be a 10.10. Whatever, 10.1 whatever, /24, and all this traffic between these VNets and the on-premises, the different locations, traverses this in this transit, and then you can leverage Azure Firewall and these things to be your internet edge, right, and create policies to block and allow traffic between different locations. So I provided links to tutorials here. This is the Azure VPN Gateway. Is it? Yes, it is. This is the tutorial for the Azure VPN Gateway. This walks through building it out, kind of what you're going to need through the Azure portal, considerations, what you're going to enter in, what you're going to have for DDoS, firewall, things like that. Kind of what you need to figure out or fill in, right, for your SKUs and your gateway subnet address, your /27, like I said before. And it goes through that. And this is just on the Azure side, right? So when it gets to the customer CPE, the local area gateway, local network gateway, you have to create this as well in Azure, which is a logical symbol of your CPE, and then you enter information of where that customer premise equipment is and what that public IP space is and what the local area IP space is. And they'll go through all this stuff that you need, right? The IP spacing, the configuring BGP, all that stuff. In order for you to configure your local devices, Microsoft actually provides documentation for that, right? So if you wanted to download scripts that they've already created for some of the major vendors out there for whatever's on-prem, they provide scripts for that. So really a great place to start if you're going to be using Cisco or Juniper in one of these models. You can just go here, pull down the script, and then just make your configuration changes. So we're going to X out of that. We'll X out of this one. And let's jump back into my blog site. We scroll down and I provide another tutorial for Azure Virtual WAN. So Azure Virtual WAN tutorial, same thing. The network topology they provide here, what are your prerequisites, what you need to have, creating your virtual WAN space, which is like, create your hub, what resource group it's going to be in, what's the resource group location. It talks about the hub and what you're going to have for your private IP space that we discussed about, what region it's going to live in, what's your AS number, right? If you're going to be, you're now leveraging BGP and things like that. So this type of configuration you need to have entered and need to have thought about. You then start walking through creating the site. And they have, for automation guidance, they have, a CPE partners, right? And I provide a link to that as well here on my blog site. This is a link to the Virtual Hub partners. Like I said, I leverage NetFoundry. These guys are fantastic. I don't need to procure hardware. It doesn't work for me. All strictly Azure and cloud and software defined. So I want to leverage NetFoundry. I want to be able to spin this up within 20, 30 minutes, right? So I provide locations to that. If you didn't want to use them and wanted to go into something different, this is a list of all the partners. And like I said, you can go to all of these guys, but I went to NetFoundry. And that'll take you to their landing page and you can start from there. NetFoundry, you can start with a free trial. I think it's 30 days. You can work with them, set up your SD-WAN, reach out to me if you need contact to these guys, reach out to them directly with your free trial. And they have technical support, which I leverage. These guys are fantastic and there's videos and stuff like that to watch. So this goes through all the stuff. You don't have to leverage third parties. This is actually, if you wanted to do it strictly in Azure, you can walk through creating these sites here, and it has all this list of all this kind of the steps and all that stuff that you need to fill out and kind of your JSON templates and all that stuff. But I'm going to jump back into my blog page. If you want to leverage NetFoundry, like I said, these guys are fantastic. They provided documentation here that walks you through deploying Azure Virtual WAN with NetFoundry. This is what I use to do it. So I'd click on this, take me to another page. And this is NetFoundry's documentation here. This is their knowledge base. Like I said, it walks you through building out Azure Virtual WAN with NetFoundry, and it'll take you to their site, kind of with all my gateways and the clients, and I'll show you that in a couple seconds. Managing your subscriptions. So what you need to do is you need to configure your subscription in Azure so that NetFoundry has correct permissions to be able to deploy VPN sites into Azure directly, and that helps them do the automation that you need for the routing and things like that. So they need access into it, and they'll walk you through kind of what you need. You're going to need your subscription ID, application ID, tenant ID. Enter that information. You spin up your hub in Azure Virtual WAN. You set all that stuff up, and then you're going to need your app registration, which grants NetFoundry with the client secret, all that stuff, the permissions to be able to act on behalf of you. So I'll scroll down here. That's all on the Azure side. Once you start getting, and you completed the Azure side and you set up your SKU and all that, and you've set up your hub, you're going to start thinking about, okay, now I have my hub set up, let's set up my sites. And once you start getting into virtual network connections, you start adding them. We're going to get into working in the NetFoundry portal to create new sites. And they have their documentation here, how to set up NetFoundry CPE Gateway. They provide, this will provide, the information on pulling down that OVA, what you're going to need to do, getting it registered, setting up the network connectivity on that. And then they also provide the articles on running the document, running it, and creating that edge device in here, and setting all that stuff and getting it registered. So these are the scripts that you're going to need when you go into the NetFoundry portal and you start setting up your site and everything. You're going to have to run some of these scripts on your appliance that you download, that OVA, and they'll give you a one-time registry key, and I'll try to show you that. Like I said, you'll run through some of these scripts, and that'll get you set up on your device. So I also provide on my blog page another link to setting up ExpressRoute, but that's outside my scope here, and I don't have a provider and major connectivity to my site, so I'm not going to walk you through that. But let's jump in my environment, and I'm going to show you what it looks like in VMware and what I have set up. So we're here in my VMware environment. This is my site here, and I have my domain controller that's set up, and I have my NetFoundry appliance, which I called it NetFoundry 02. I can pop out these different appliances. You can see them here. This is my domain controller. It's logged me out because I've been talking, and I'll show you kind of the connectivity that I have going on here. You can see some pings I just have it up and running, and some of the ping, just up and running. Some of the packets are dropping and stuff. But you can see how I have my topology set up in Azure Active Directory, Partner Original Self-Managed Active Directory, and I have my different subnets, one for Azure, the other one for my office that I have set up here in VMware, which is located in my Buffalo office. And you can see that ACAD01 there, that's represented, in my ACAD2, which is what I'm RDP'd into here, which is what is in Azure. So this is what I have set up in my VMware environment. If I were to minimize this and then show you what it looks like, this is the CentOS appliance that I've downloaded from NetFoundry. It looks great. They've done a great job with the CentOS. It shows my public IP address, which I have to give them, also the local area network IP space that I provided, and that Ethernet adapter IP that I gave. And then it shows how to register it and what that URL is. I could log into this appliance, I could do ping tests, I could do stuff like that. And like I said, you'll have to give it an IP when you first configure it. But let's jump into the NetFoundry portal, and I want to show you what it looks like on that end. So we're here in the NetFoundry portal, and this is the dashboard. So first thing you had to do, based off the documentation, like I said, was provide your subscription ID, your tenant ID, directory ID, all that stuff, right? And then you configure NetFoundry and grant them the permissions to be able to look at that. And once they do that, you then pop into Azure Virtual WAN, and now it's able to query my environment and see that I've created this hub, which I called VWAN, and you could see that that's here. So it automatically goes to my subscription and sees that it sees that I have something created, and now I can take action against this hub and create new sites. In order to do that, I would then go into my endpoints. I could then go to Manage Azure Virtual WAN Sites. I can click there. This is the site that I have connected. This is what I've showed you with the NetFoundry device that's connected. It's in Buffalo. That's what I've labeled it. And I'll show you that in the Azure portal, what it represents and what it looks like. But this is the connectivity I have. And if I were to click on it, they'd provide more details. If I had it up and running longer, there's not much detail here or anything. But I provide more information, and you can get these details when it's up and running. If I wanted to add another site, I would click on this. I can create sites at scale. So if I had multiple sites across the country, I can do bulk creation sites, or I can just create one site. What would I want to call it? Say I want to call it Boston. What's the region in the cloud that I want to give it? I want to say it's East US because it's Boston. What's the resource group? It's querying Azure. So I'm going to say, okay, I want my production resource group querying Azure here. So I'm going to say I want my hub that I've selected that you guys saw. What's the location in Azure? I'm going to keep Azure East data center. And what's my public IP? So I went and I grabbed my public IP. I'll paste that there and I'll blur it out for you guys so you don't see it. And then what's my local BGP address? I'll say it's going to be to 1.10 250, which I hope is not taken on my local area network, and then I'll just click create here. Now, once I go and I click create, you can see how fast it's already created its registration for that site in NetFoundry. They provided a key here. I'm going to copy that to my clipboard, and I can use that going forward when I create my site on my other location in Boston. So let's jump on my environment in Boston. Let's actually walk through this and see what it looks like. So I'm here in my location in my Hyper-V in Boston, and I have a machine actually on-prem in my house called Mars, affectionately. And I'd like to say, hey, I downloaded the OVA already. I pulled it down from NetFoundry site, and I want to say, hey, I want to create a new virtual machine. And I'm going to walk through the wizard. I'm going to say it's ACNF01. I had O2 in Azure. I'll keep it in the same place. Say it's Gen 1. I'll keep the same RAM for now. I'll say I'm going to use my NIC, virtual switch that I called external on this box. I click next, and then I tell it to use an existing hardware. And then I'm going to point it to my NetFoundry folder, and I point it to this VHD, and I just click next and finish, and voila. Imagine racking and stacking and doing all that. I already have a virtual machine. I'll then click connect. I'll then click start. And now I'm going to be walking into my NetFoundry CentOS device. It's launching CentOS and Hyper-V. And I can let this run through it. And I'm going to edit some of the stuff just to go through for speed purposes. So if you guys see some of the choppiness, I kind of want to walk through this. It might be a little bit longer, but I think there's more value if you get to see it. And then I log into my appliance here. And there we go. It sees my public IP already. It already sees my IP space. It already sees the interface IP that I have. And I can already start working with this device. Like I said, they gave me the scripts, so I'm going to go get those scripts, and I'm going to paste those and run through this really quick. So this is the command to get your appliance configured and registered with NetFoundry. I'm going to run it, and let's see if it works. So it's going out, and it's doing its registration, so this is great. So here we go, registration complete. So it's gone out on this appliance. It's already gone out. It just took a couple of minutes to do that. Went through the internet, peered with the NetFoundry fabric out there, and now it's part of this mesh. So great stuff. There's another command I can run to make sure that the services are up and running, and I'll run that and show you what that is. So this is the command I'll run to make sure that the service is up and running, and then you now see that it's active and it's running. So we're good. So let's jump into the NetFoundry portal and see what we see here now. So we're here back at the NetFoundry portal, and voila, we see Boston has been created. So simple as that. It only took me a couple of minutes. I now have connectivity. I now have Boston site, and I have a Buffalo site in NetFoundry. So let's jump into the Azure portal, and let's look at Azure Virtual WAN, and let's see what it looks like from that end. So we're here in my Azure portal. We have Virtual WAN already configured here. I have it in my blade. I can click on this, and it'll take me to my hub that I've created, right? And like I said, NetFoundry was querying my subscription and all that, and this was the name that it pulled in. I could then click on it. I could drill down into the hub. It'll provide information around the branch-to-branch enabled, what's succeeded, where my hub resides, what services I have configured. I can, go through access control, who has configurations, who has permissions to manipulate this service, and I can edit tags. I can check out the configuration and see what SKU I've selected when I deployed this. I can enable or disable branch-to-branch connectivity, but then I can also drill down and look more at my hub and what I've created. So I had a hub called Hub East. If I had something in a different location geographically in the country, I would say maybe Hub West or maybe Hub Europe East or something like that, right? And then you can see how many VPN sites I have connected and the address space and what services there are. And then I could go in and I can edit the virtual hub. Now, mind you, anything that you do with the virtual hub takes about 30 minutes to make changes or anything. So if you do make changes, just understand that, you can grab a snack or something and wait. We can then go down to the VPN sites. And we'll see the site that we have here provisioned. This is the one that's in Buffalo in the VMware site that I showed you. You can see how it's connected there, the public IP that I've blocked out. And once I create another site, we'll see the Boston site there once I add it. If I were to add any point-to-site connectivity or ExpressRoute circuits, they would all be under these locations in the same blade. I could then look at the virtual network connections. I could drill down into that and see what's been created and what's established. And it's just another view with additional information around the virtual WAN. So I look at the Hub East, I can see the virtual network that's connected. That's my core VNet, what I called in Azure. That's where I have all my core services like Active Directory and things like that. And you can see there's a default route, that's the default route table. You can see Azure to Boston, that's what I call the virtual network connection. And I've kind of edited this demo a couple of times. I could go in and I can edit virtual connections and stuff like that, but I won't do that here. So let's go and import our Boston network now. So we're back at the NetFoundry console, and like I said, this is where the automation and kind of the magic is, right? So, without you having to go back into the Azure portal and going through PowerShell and things like that, you saw what I did with the CentOS. I downloaded it, I registered all that. Now you can see this site here in Boston. You can see how it says deployable. If I click on that and then I click here, you can see deploy to Azure. So right directly from the NetFoundry console, I can deploy the configuration and the site directly to Azure, and you can see how it's been deployed in Azure. This is amazing. So let's just jump into the Azure portal and see what it looks like now that I've deployed it to Azure. So we're back in the Azure portal, and now we're going to tell Azure Virtual WAN that what we've deployed from NetFoundry is now enabled or can be used in Azure Virtual WAN as another site. So we're here in Virtual WAN. We're going to click to the hub. We're going to click on our hub here, and then we're going to drill down into VPN site. And then we're going to click here and we're going to go, let's create another site. So you see how Buffalo's there, but it's not listed. Actually, I don't want to do that. I want to remove the filter, and now we see Boston. And we're going to connect VPN site here. And then I don't have to enter anything. I could just hit connect. And now it's going to go through its process of configuring this connection. So thanks everybody for sticking with me. I just wanted to fast forward this and just show you that it does get connected. You can see the VPN connection that I established through the Azure Virtual WAN is connected, but it does take some time for everything to come up and for BGP and all the routes to actually connect. And I just wanted to show you the process. I don't really want to go through the troubleshooting and all that stuff and make this long-winded. But if you have any questions around this, any questions around Azure Virtual WAN or anything, please feel free to reach out to me. I hope you find this information useful. Stick with me. We're going to continue on the next steps, number 6. And if you have any questions around Azure Virtual WAN or NetFoundry or anything, please be sure to reach out to me. I can get you connected with NetFoundry guys, and we can discuss Azure Virtual WAN and use cases and things like that. Click like, click subscribe. If you have any questions, leave it to me. Like I said, reach out to me, and I hope you can find this useful. Thanks, everybody.